After peace talks with Iran failed this weekend, President Trump saying the U.S. military will now blockade ships trying to go through the Strait of Hormuz. And what you're looking at here is a map that is tracking the traffic there. Today, the U.S. Central Command saying that blockade will begin at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. It will apply only to ships going to and from Iran. Meantime, Iran's Revolutionary Guard says any such action will be dealt with harshly and decisively. And so with all of that as the background, new concern tonight about the economic impact of all of this. Joining us now is Natasha Sarin. She's an economist, former Deputy Assistant Treasury Secretary for Economic Policy. Natasha, thanks for being here with us. We now have these plans for this blockade, and there's still a big question mark over the disruption of this global oil market will be resolved. We don't know. Crude oil prices are surging once again tonight. We're watching these. You can see this is real time right here. How do you think about all of this as we head into this new week?
Yeah, I think we are at a moment of tremendous uncertainty for the American economy. And frankly, we got an inflation print on Friday that was at its highest level that it had been in the last 2 years. And that it started to indicate the impact of this war on consumer prices, and particularly, as you were mentioning, Jessica, on the price of energy and the price of oil, where energy markets have seen their largest price increase in the last month that they've had in the last 20 years. So we know that there is massive disruption that is coming from this closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And we know that a prolonged closure that affects some 20% of the world's global oil supply is going to have an increased effect on consumer prices and is going to depress the size of the American economy and its strength by several hundred billions of dollars over the course of the next year. So these are difficult times for the American economy and, frankly, for the global economy as we're watching all this uncertainty and tumult play out in real time.
Certainly. And for people who are here in the U.S. watching at home, I think they kind of look at all of this and they're like, okay, I already see really high gas prices. They are noticeably higher. What happens now? Like, what does this mean now? What would you tell them?
Well, what I would tell them is it's so interesting, Jessica, because, just like less than a few months ago, this administration was in the face of a ton of inflation that was coming from the global trade war that had been initiated that was raising consumer prices by something like $1,000 plus annually. They were pointing to energy. They were pointing to gas prices in the State of the Union and saying this is an area where consumers have seen some relief. And that was true. Over the course of the first year of the Trump administration, we saw gas prices fall. That has all been erased, and then some, of course, as a result of this conflict. And I think the thing that the American people need to understand and are already grappling with in some sense is that this isn't just about gas prices. This is also about aviation fuel and what that translates to in the form of higher ticket prices and some types of routes not even being available because the airplanes do not have the fuel that they need to be able to be flown. It translates to higher food prices because as a result of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, there's a significant disruption in terms of global fertilizer markets. And so these consequences are so wide-ranging. And what's also so significant is it is not yet clear, even if magically tomorrow the Strait of Hormuz was fully open and fully operational, the destruction of the infrastructure of the markets that we've seen over the course of the last many weeks, that doesn't magically go back to the way things used to be. And we are far from a resolution to this conflict, as this weekend's talks illustrated.
Yeah. And to that point, the head of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, said that the inflation is temporary and in his mind is going to go away very quickly. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that for a few reasons. One is that I think part of what is important for us all to remember is, and the American people experienced it, so they remember it well. Over the course of the post-pandemic period, we have been dealing with the aftermath of increased and surging inflation and high consumer prices. And that sort of inflation uptick had started to come down at the beginning of this second Trump administration when this president campaigned on lower prices on day one and decreasing inflation as being kind of a central pillar of his economic promise. But every action that's been taken since then, be it the tariffs that are at their highest level that we've had in this country over the course of a century, or more recently, this conflict with Iran and the consequences for energy markets and so much more, all of that is actually pushing in the direction of increased inflation, not decreases in inflation and relief for consumer wallets. And so I think that this is all going to be with us for quite some time. But I think what's also going to be with us is the nature of how sort of unstable and uncertain the American economy feels. And you're starting to see that even in the context of this conflict, where there's some discussion that if there is some sort of toll booth in the Strait of Hormuz, maybe rather than those markets being anchored in dollars, those markets are going to be anchored in currency like crypto. And I think that is just like a statement about how the dollar, which has really benefited from being this reserve asset of the world, and the American people have benefited from being a stable hand in the entire globe, like all of that is sort of starting to fade away with real and significant and frankly lasting consequence.
Yeah, really something to think about. All right, Natasha Sarin, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Jessica.